people want to say, all right, I want to learn this and then spread the word and spread the knowledge to other people, and the intent is good. The intent is to help them to understand it. But from a cultural perspective, from the Kootenai perspective, you don't do that to somebody else, because what there's the understanding and the explanation that comes to them through experience, and that understanding will change between this year and next year, and that new understanding will also be right for that particular time.
Welcome to Podcast IRC, conversations with Indigenous scholars to advance understandings and gain new knowledge, hosted by the Indigenous Research Center at Salish Kootenai College.
Now what we're trying to do is we're trying to take a look at how can tribal people academically approach researching the way that we live as tribal people. And that's our challenge right now. We have to separate the academic approaches from the past from the academic approaches that tribal people would use. And we need to hone in on what that academic approach from a tribal person would be different from a non-tribal person. The boundaries are always going to be there. There's always going to be limits to what you can approach from an academic standpoint. And we shouldn't be frustrated or angered or try to avoid those boundaries. Understand that as tribal people, where are those boundaries and how far are we going to go before we start making people uncomfortable or really compromise how we live.
So that's a couple little sound bites from our advisory board members who oversee some of the details and activities that we engage in here at the research center. And in this extensive conversation we had, we're exploring some issues that are starting to arise, probably not even with just us, but across Indian country, you could say, where we're having Native people, Indigenous researchers, wanting to investigate and research Native things in their own lands. So we start running up against this uncharted territory, I guess you could say. Well, maybe for our generation, but maybe not for previous generations. But it brings up this idea of really what is research from a Native or Indigenous perspective. How does that even look, and does it even situate itself into this odd academic structure? And we've talked about this before, but we're encountering some challenges with it. And I'm wondering, Aaron, in your in your research that you've done and in your profession, you deal extensively with what you would say or what you'd call maybe traditional knowledge. And you may have encountered the resistance or maybe even lack of resistance in accessing that knowledge, but then also how you go about sharing that knowledge with other people. So that's the question I wanted to ask Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? What is your experience in that? Let us know.
Well, I probably at some point have experienced every level of either rejection or acceptance,
right?
in in all facets of research. Now, one of the biggest things I notice is in more traditional communities, or with people who are more, I don't want to even use the word traditional, because I mean, they don't live in teepees, and more ceremonially driven people, right?
Right.
They almost seem more open, which is counter to what we're taught. Like, we're kind of taught like people are, it's all secret, right? But I notice people
Right.
who are very comfortable with ceremonialism and like ritualism and the way they understand belief. They're very open
Right.
about what they know, and they share it in the way like they learned it. So they'll cite like where it comes from. Now, what I'm noticing though within research is that you're getting, and it's a weird time, because in the past, if you were to go to seek knowledge, you would do it, I guess, whatever culturally appropriate for you to do, and you would
Right.
get information. Once you give for that information, in a sense, you're buying knowledge. And
Yeah.
that's not a taboo thing to say. I think we're even taught that that's a bad phrase to use.
Right.
That person who is giving you the knowledge, they don't dictate now at that point what happens to it, because otherwise they just won't do it. And I've run into that too, where they'll say, no, I don't want to do it. So, and that's fine too. But I'm noticing now that it seems like in that young Indian scholars are held to a different standard by their own communities. So, and we see this all the time, where like a third party will come in and almost seem to have more access to things. And I don't know why that is. And I've noticed that in my position as an anthropologist and as a Crow member, I've run into it where there was a couple of times where they didn't quite know how to take me. Am I an anthropologist or am I a Crow? And it was kind of an odd situation, because I could tell them kind of doing the math in their head and like how to so, and that's up to me, like, to try to be like, well, I'm doing this ultimately because I'm Crow, like it has nothing to do with my degree. So I would say I kind of got off track from what you originally asked. You asked me what are some of the
Well, I guess so. So this is one of the from the soundbite. It's trying to understand why somebody wants knowledge, and when they get that knowledge, how they're going to use it. That's kind of one of the seems like one of the themes of the commentary that we heard, and specifically mentioning that knowledge can be fluid, and understanding can change from time to time. So, taking that.
So in that soundbite, when it was said that each individual is going to have basically their own interpretation, right?
Yeah.
But there's still a base meaning though to something.
Right.
Kind of a stand, like if they say this song is used for this reason, it's still, that's the reason and the meaning. Now how it's accepted by somebody and how someone jives to it, I guess that's individual, but I still,
right.
So otherwise it would change all the time, right?
Yeah, and I think, and maybe we will have some of these individuals on to get into this discussion, but I think the way I interpreted that that little piece of advice was that, I mean, I guess it's going to a level of understanding that maybe we're not trying to get to, the individual understanding of things. Yeah, it's going to be different from individual to individual, depending on the nature of their quest for knowledge or whatever they're trying to seek or use that for. But I think it's the process that you're talking about that I think is, I guess I shouldn't say it was not standardized, but there is a foundation that a person goes through.
I guess maybe there is a form of standardization with it. Otherwise, then it's not tribal.
Right.
Because it's the group. I mean, the group, it still has to fall within the umbrella of what you're doing and still be under that, kind of housed under that. So
Yeah. No, I think you're
that's
right,
why
and
go ahead.
that's the first thing that came to my mind when I'm listening to this, and I think, well, maybe not quite understanding it correctly, but yeah, the power of a people is really their likeness toward each other, or not, how they are the same rather than how we are individually different.
So that's in some ways you can define as a tribe. That's a tribe.
Well,
Otherwise, we're just
yeah,
kind of individuals.
yeah, going rogue,
So going rogue, like
rogue
Sarah
on the
Palin.
land. Yeah, yeah, going rogue on the land, and just, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. And then the
Well, because
second,
you don't want to be disrespectful, right? You don't want to be disrespectful and be like, because I think what he said is right, but
yeah,
what I think is he's saying something that typical research isn't trying to get to anyway. So
right,
in a case where you're trying to compare like one tribe's songs to another tribe's songs, you would say,
yeah,
hey, is their capturing song the same as this tribe's
right,
buffalo chasing song or whatever,
right,
you still have
yeah,
to have the kind of a base thing. You don't need, from that point on, it's needless. You don't need to get into anything else after that
right,
for the sake of that, whatever that research is, right? You're just comparing tunes, or you're just comparing cultural traits, or
yeah,
so I think a response like that, like the meanings are different from each individual, is true, but not
yeah.
at the level of research. Like that's going into like your black belt now, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, sort of. I know it's a belt that's black, but I don't know what you're talking about.
If you're varsity and
Okay.
and most research is just JV. I mean, it
Right,
is
right,
when
right,
it
right,
comes to
right, right, right,
indigenous stuff,
right,
it's JV stuff.
right. And so I think that's where the caution comes in, is you don't want someone like that. You don't want the JV. You don't want the where's the yellow belt at in this hierarchy? Are they pretty low, the yellow belt?
In jujitsu or karate or what are you talking about?
What? I thought it was standard. Yellow meant
No, no,
disabled.
yellow.
Ah,
Yes, yeah. It's early on in most anyway. It's early. It's like
okay,
right
okay.
after
So
white.
you don't want the yellow belt going into to fight your battles, because they're probably not going to do so good. So you don't want the yellow belt researcher to come in and fumble around with
Un,
your precious tribal knowledge.
unless the person they're battling is a yellow belt, and believe it or not, that's we're getting to the
Yeah,
point in culture that some of these people who are determining how culture should be researched, how culture should
yeah,
be interpreted,
yeah.
are JV themselves. Now, that's a
Right.
controversial statement, and
It is.
I'm not trying to step on anyone's elders or historians, but this is a result of assimilation and colonization. Like cultural knowledge is getting so limited, especially for some
Yeah,
communities, that
yeah,
now we're getting to the point where the researchers, especially indigenous researchers, are getting to the point where they might have equal amount of knowledge and exposure to stuff
yeah.
than some of the people that we're calling elders. I mean, they are
Right,
elders in a physical sense, right? I
right,
still don't even know what that term really means when people say elder, because I think of like Mormons and
right, right, right. Yeah, it's an odd one.
let's
Let's
let our guests talk.
let's let's introduce our special guest today. Well, first of all, that first clip. Let's just make sure we know that we're saying who was talking there. That was our advisory board member, Vernon Finley. He's the head of the Kootenai Culture Committee, and he has a lot more to say about this subject. So hopefully we'll get him on again. We'll get him on and we'll chat about this thing we're talking about in more detail. But right now we've got a special guest today who's joining us from Arley, Montana. She's educated young gal. She's holds a couple of master's degrees and is um, an artist of notoriety lately, and that's Salisha OldBull.
and a
Yeah.
champion powwow dancer.
Champion,
Got it.
the champion,
Won
champion.
many
Champion.
specials.
Yeah,
Champion
that's the stand.
one time in teens at IWSL.
She won. I was still teen category. This is before junior category. She won teens, northern traditional. She was wearing an elk tooth dress in front of crow judges and won.
What does Iowa still stand for anyway?
Uh,
I don't even know anymore. Inter
I don't know.
island secondary
What?
western.
Remember that? You remember that time we drove? We jumped in my Pathfinder and went to IWSL Powwow. Remember that? Sean,
We did?
Yeah.
Where was it at?
And we did
You had to
like
say an
2002 or something, 2003 or something.
That's funny.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Or no, we went to Little Bighorn College Powwow or something with Kenny.
That sounds-
Kenny pretty on top. And
That sounds more right. Yeah, because I think Iowa
Okay.
still died out after a while. Yeah,
I'm
intertribal
driving.
secondary.
Secondary pedagogies of the
Remember
Northern
acronym?
Rockies and Plains.
Yeah, I don't know what it stands for. Oh, anyway,
Water Compact.
that sounds right.
Water
Okay,
pack.
so Salisha,
Oh, I was just thinking about this the soundbite, the second one with Greg. I was thinking, about how he said that there's boundaries and what
yeah,
what are we willing to test as boundaries. But I think what you guys are doing, I think, is a really huge a testament to that. And I think there's a lot of people really interested in and curious how to be able to go forward, because I think the generations before, you have your boarding school generation, but after that time you have a lot of people that didn't go to college. They didn't
yeah,
make it that far, but they're the ones that encouraged everybody to go to college. And the people, there was like a couple generations of people that didn't go to college, but yet they're the same ones that tended to encourage people to go to college. And I think this idea of preserving and trying to save something, there's starting to be a lot of confusion and in that, because of in the past, when you see, I was just thinking about this because I was sitting in on a language lesson about a week or so ago, maybe it was 2 weeks ago.
mm-hmm.
And I thought all of the things that the language teachers in a lot of places use today are written documents from non-Indian travelers that came through, and either non-Indian travelers or priests or Jesuits or something of that sort. And so here we are, 100 years later, and we're not reading our people's writing, we're reading a non-Indian person's writing, trying to decipher and trying to reteach ourselves how to learn something that's getting lost, or kind of, it's kind of going away in a lot of places. And so I think about being encouraged to go to college and then having to go through an approval process of some sort. But what it feels like and what it felt like in a few pieces that I ever had to go through that process is it feels like you're trying to validate who you are by you're trying to validate something that's already in existence, and it may or may not have been documented in the past. But it's like you're trying to prove it from your own tribal perspective, and you're trying to rewrite what's already written, and you're trying to make minor corrections, or you're trying to tweak or revise the narrative so that when you're able to go forward with what you're doing in research, then you can just you don't have to worry about somebody trying to tell you that this isn't the way it is because you've done the research yourself. So
Yeah.
in the future, 2 generations ahead of you, the native students that go to school then are the ones that are look back and say, well, this is stuff that was written by my own people. And
Yeah.
my own people took the effort to go through the approval process that was set in place that everybody else had to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And now, in some cases, it's a double standard. They not only have to follow their protocol, but they have to also follow their own tribe or some other tribe's protocol in addition to that.
Yeah.
It's like it's like off that show. We have to be more Indian than the Indian, more educated than educated. We have
Yeah.
to work harder. We have to work twice as hard. But that also reminds me of something that one of my grandparents told me is it's good to be able to learn somebody's way as good as they know it, because that will make you as smart as they are, but you'll still be as smart as our people are too. So you're like double smart. But it's
Yeah.
always like, it feels like we have to repeat everything we're doing once in our language, once in their language. And
Yeah.
on one hand, that could make us maybe a little more intelligent, but on the other hand, why do we have to work double hard to document something that comes from us? What does that really mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting that we have to take this approach. But I think it's the reality that we live in is we need jobs. We can't live on we can't live on just being native, despite what a lot of people think. We don't get any handouts, man. So we don't get nothing.
show you my
You know.
show you my student loan payment. If
Yeah,
people
yeah.
think I won't go to school for free.
Let's put a link of that up in the show notes there.
Yeah.
Link up. So
Go
so
fund
uh,
me.
so yeah, maybe we should do a GoFundMe for that.
Yeah.
No, but so boundaries. That's an interesting one. I think we, in a lot of ways, every generation is breaking a boundary but not necessarily in the way that I think is right. We're breaking boundaries in Western education. We're breaking boundaries in getting people into the state Senate and into the United States Congress. We're breaking boundaries into Western or non-native things. But where's the boundary breaking in our own ways? And I think that's what Greg was saying. And where is that boundary? Let's find it. Let's get uncomfortable and let's make progress. It reminds me of something that my dad had said to me just recently, and it speaks to this. He says, when alcohol came around, that a lot of people were drunk and got into being alcoholics. And he said that there was no medicine ways to deal with those. There was a medicinal way or a ceremonial way to deal with other kinds of ailments or things that were more historic. But when this other thing come around, there was no answer for it. And I think in some regard we've stopped trying to find answers in our own traditional ways for those things like we used to, and now we're turning to Western academic ways. So counseling and therapy that are, we try to tack on a cultural component to it, but really it's just Western approaches.
Put
And
feathers on it.
yeah, and I don't know if that's offensive or not, but man, I think our our advisory board, Greg, who was the second person in the clip there, I think says something, and I think Vernon is saying something really important too. That there's a lot that we have to understand and acknowledge in the path that we're taking. But again, we should be really careful to know how we're going to use that and where that knowledge is going to end up. Because, yeah, go ahead. What is it? You breathed.
I breathed like I was gonna say.
You saved me. I was running out of air.
Sean Dean was in the weeds.
Yeah.
Get the rumble strip. Wake him up. I think what Greg was saying was, you could tell the way he said it, whether you agree with it or not, the way he said it, there was a comfort to it. Like he was cool with saying it, right? Like he felt this is a familiar thought that he's had.
Yeah.
And so he said it. But again, going back to what I was saying earlier, that comfort level, I think, comes from kind of this cultural competency. Like a confidence that comes in with that you see in practitioners.
Yeah.
And I don't want to call it arrogance, but he was like cool saying, well, there's boundaries, but let's push them. Like, where the person who learns culture secondary, they don't veer from the dogma that's created for them.
Yeah.
Because
what do you mean?
It's kind of like saying if you learn how to run a sweat, you go in the sweat, you run the sweat. You run it exactly the way you're taught, which is culturally appropriate. But if you know the origin of the sweat and you know like all the story related to it, it gives you a sense of confidence on why you're doing something. And I'm not saying cut corners, but there's like a way of working with the sweat. Like you're an integral part of that, as opposed to just an officiator. You know what I mean? And you see that with other things, and you see it with people who kind of have this air about them when they say, well, yeah, you can do that. Michael Frambois always tells the story about someone came up to him and asked an old man from Browning named Mike Swimsunder if they could make those war bonnets, those straight up Blackfeet style war bonnets. And Mike Swimsunder says, yeah. And then the people leave and then make a bunch of them. And then they find out they couldn't make them. And they're like, well, Mike Swimsunder said we could make them. Because, I mean, you can, you know what I mean? And I think that's what he was saying. Like, yeah, you can.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Like, because he knows in his mind, the way he understands his culture and the heritage and ritual and ceremony, he's like, yeah, you can.
Yeah.
And they left before the but, you know, I think, but I also think, and I don't mean to talk too much, but I also believe a lot of the standard, I do. The standard that we hold ourselves to in academics is a standard we've created for ourselves. The truth is especially when it comes to traditional cultural knowledge and indigenous research, they don't know what we're doing. If it's arranged right and you ask the question and you answer the question, I mean, what are they going to do? They usually accept it and they say, yeah, you did your lit review, you did all this.
Yeah.
So when Salisha's right, we do have to work twice as hard, but also sometimes I think we need to start recognizing where they don't. I mean, what do they know? Honestly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not like these committees are made up of people from our communities. Like, so how much should we give them is always a question you should ask.
Right.
But why are you doing the work? And I think that's where it's different. Most Native people do research for themselves, for their communities, or just to further their own knowledge, not necessarily to help a department or a professor or a research question where you see that most of the time. Most of it's just, this is something I don't know a lot about. I want to learn more about it, you know?
Right. Yeah, no, I see that. And it speaks to another thing Salisha said about, you know, filling the academic space, but I shouldn't even say academic space. I guess just giving material for future indigenous scholars, giving them something that they can put in their literature review that reflects our way of thinking and our way of doing things. But then that's the danger, man, because where's the platform for that right now? And it's it's not held in the tribe. It's not held in any sort of tribal structure, because that kind of knowledge is not generally, written down in a formal paper and then gone through peer review and published.
What's
That
and it's getting to the point where it's not allowed to be, and it's
right,
like, I
right,
always wonder when Edward Curtis was traipsing through the Northwest, like, did anyone tell him? I mean, there's people who said no to him, but for the
yeah,
most part, he was successful in his endeavors.
right,
He was successful. And is
yeah,
there any Indian native person that that would just throw out Edward Curtis's work?
Well,
not really.
I think
No, I mean,
like things like what Edward Curtis and I get where our older people are coming from, when it comes to understanding, how perspectives change or whatever. I get that, because those who are fortunate to understand our languages are able to go back and transcribe what was said, and they're able to find out
Hmm.
that maybe what was really said was kind of a fib, or kind of not really the whole truth, or it was the
Right.
truth, but it was disguised as some other type of story. And I mean, we wouldn't throw that out, because if you gave it to somebody who still was fortunate enough to have been taught something that came from 100 years ago, or whenever
Yeah.
Curtis came through, they would be able to listen to what was written, or what was recorded, or what was written, and sort of decipher that, and they would be able to understand that, where Curtis would have taken it from a Western perspective and recorded it down as a Western perspective, and then passed it on to other Western perspective people, it's not even really the truth at all. It's something
Yeah.
entirely different. And but in that sense, it doesn't take away from the little things that happen that we don't really talk about a whole lot. I mean, it's kind of always like the white elephant in the room, but like the idea of Curtis profiting from something like that, which would be our values, our knowledge,
Yeah.
something that we were unaware of. And so nowadays you have the people that sat there and got to watch an old person um, interpret what was being said a long time ago, and you get to see the reaction of they got to see the reaction of it. And it's like they were the ones that then, now that they've become old people, have decided that they wish not to share anything anymore. But it then creates this weird situation for us younger generations, because then how are we supposed to know anything if they don't know they don't know what to share, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden nothing at all is being shared. And
Right.
it's a really interesting thing, because even now there can't be a repeat of what Curtis, and I think what somebody like what Curtis did, I think nowadays it's like that's what like what Aaron does, like it's trying to go back and put some integrity
Yeah.
back into the things that are being acknowledged in the academic sense. And
Yeah.
it's people like Aaron who would be able to um, create that sense of a boundary, or to model that sense of a boundary. So I
Yeah.
think what makes it challenging is just being able to coax our older people back into understanding, like, hey, I'm not Edward Curtis, I'm this person, and
Yeah.
I don't have any of the same intentions that Curtis did, but I don't know, I think that's just a really interesting thing that occurs with academics.
Yeah. It is. It's everywhere, man. That same issue. Well, I don't know if it's everywhere, but it seems like you hear it a lot.
seems like
It,
it is.
it does. It does.
We need to
Well,
hear from some people from, like, I don't know, like the Midwest, Great
Yeah.
Lakes or something, like
Yeah.
kind of just to see if they're running into the same problems. I think it's a combination of a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
In young Indigenous scholars are starting to ask better questions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're
Demanding
kind of
more.
out of that. Yeah. But meanwhile, the people who hold knowledge is dwindling.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So then instead of the reaction being like these few people pouring out what they know, it actually seems to be the counter. It's like hoarded in a way.
Yeah.
Or the
Very
chosen
strange.
few get to hear. It is weird because if you go back to the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, Native scholars was very few. Knowledge, people who held knowledge was a lot higher, obviously.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't know. But yet the questions the Native scholars were asking then, we would consider probably basic because the need wasn't as great, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. There wasn't no need to document or investigate because those things it was functioning, I guess, in a way. And I guess the only
Well, I
difference
remember one
was
time
yeah.
when I graduated high school, my uncle says, "What are you gonna do?" And your options growing up are like join the army or get married,
Yeah.
And I said, I'm gonna go to college. He said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know. I want to like do like Native American Studies or something. And he said, so he's like, well, just hang out with me and I'll show you.
Yeah.
It's a weird because it's a weird
Yeah.
concept for some of these folks, it's a weird idea because they don't see the forest through the trees or whatever that saying is, right? So like one time I asked my
What?
grandma, I'd said, I'd tell my grandma, I'll say, hey, what do you know about this? And she'll say, I don't know anything about that. And then she'll talk about that thing that she doesn't know anything about for an hour and a half. And then I'll say, well, it seems
Yeah.
like you did know something. And she's like, well, I didn't really tell you nothing. Because in her mind, she's holding herself to the standard of the people she knew when she was young, those
All right.
elders then. Well, she's
Yeah.
86 years old. So she's like
Yeah.
saying, well, I don't know anything. So how do we get these old folks to come out of that? Don't compare yourself to your elders. And if we didn't believe that you held knowledge, I mean, maybe we wouldn't go to you, but I actually think a lot of these old folks, any of them, you can get something. They have something to offer. So it's like a confidence thing. It's like I don't know, man. We live in a weird time.
It is. It reminds me of this example, and I'll just talk about it briefly, then we'll go to the break here. But so there's a word here that is I grew up knowing, and everybody kind of grew up knowing is what we call the non-Indians, the Suyapis, and when kind of the language learning really exploded and people were analyzing words and trying to get to the root and get past the 70s and 80s of language learning, there was an attempt to dissect words and figure out their meaning. Well, this word Suyapi was dissected and taken apart to try to figure out what it was, and there was many different sorts of explanations, but it took just a little bit of research for me to look back into some records and look back into some of Curtis's work, and to find out that that word is just a borrowed word, that it comes from the tribes up north, the Pagans, and that word kind of spread throughout the tribes down here, and to them it meant like a half breed or a half Cree. So if you can imagine that time, when the traders were coming in during the fur trade, they had a word to describe these people. So that probably bled down here. So that's one example of where, we could just go with what we're fed, but we have this desire to know more and to understand things a little deeper than, what are the elders that are alive now. Not to say their knowledge is not valid, but we have our own questions, and we have our own things that we need to know.
Well, and we were raised in such a way that our we do everything like in a Western sense. Like our academic is all in a Western sense, but when you finally make it to college and you look around you and you see that the examples that are given to you are not coming from where you were from. And so it's like a natural tendency to want to include your perspective into that format. And so you spend time trying to figure out, well, how can I make my perspective as valid as this perspective? You know, my somewhat indigenized perspective, how do I make it as valid as this westernized perspective that I have to be tested on in order to get a diploma? How can I include my own information in there too? Because in all sense, what Aaron said is like, you really do wish you could be home learning the things on a daily basis, because you were kind of half told that that's how kids used to have it back in the day before schools came into the picture. You know, that's how everything was taught, was outside or by application, you know, and because nothing is like that anymore, you spend a lot of time trying to figure out, like, how can I find a way to include home into what is happening here with my higher academic career.
Yeah.
It seems like we use academics to like cheat the system a little bit too. You know, like what Salisha's saying, it's like, man, we can't learn it the way we ideally want to learn it, so we kind of use academics like to write papers about stuff. And like, but I was thinking, maybe I should let you do the break.
Well, finish your thought, man. Okay.
Well, I was gonna say, do the break. Do the break.
Let's do the break, and then you can pour on another 20 minutes. All right?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Listen up.
And we're starting conversations here that I think are vital for the future. They're vital because we're the ones that are standing in the doorway right now and going to advance or just stand here for a while longer and hold this door shut to people like some of the elders who for whatever reason can't allow that door even a crack or whatever, to allow a discussion or to allow for a little bit more experience for someone who's searching there. And that has to be for now, and that has to be the way it is. But for those of us who are seated right here, we're starting something very important and very vital for the future.
Yeah, so that's another one of our advisory board members, Myrna Dumontier, and kind of reflecting on really what we're just talking about just now is, you know, the door that gets shut, the door that gets opened maybe just for certain people, the door that doesn't even exist.
Yeah, for some people it don't even exist.
They don't even exist, yeah. Or maybe some people it's a screen door and they just share way too much, you know. They just let it all go.
Hey, actually, that brought when you played that, it reminded me of a thought the other day when we were in the board meeting that I thought of it, and it's a rather, I don't know if it's controversial, but it's an honest thought. Like I'm not.
Yeah.
I was thinking. Myrna talked about we're the ones standing in the doorway, and I think she was making reference to all of us. I don't think she was talking solely about her and her position, right?
Yeah, that's how I understood it.
Yeah, and so then I thought, you know, we always say let's refer to, we'll let the elders make this decision, or well, kind of, I've heard that so many times, but then also what she's saying is in a way is hinting at something different. And I thought, how long are we going to subcontract decision making to people who are already overused? I mean, out of respect for them, it's like we ask a lot of older folks, you know, in Indian country.
Right.
And it's rather laborsome. I mean, in a way we see our old folks as a resource, and I mean, that's not fair to them. But then at
Yeah.
the same time, it's like when you look at guys like Curtis or Lowy or Franz Boas and Tate and Thane White and all these guys, they were interviewing people who were like 27 years old, 30 years old. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so how do we get back to a point where people who are that age are confident enough to talk about knowledge? Because I think sometimes we use that as a way to get out of stuff we don't know or we're not comfortable with. We say, well, I got to talk to my elders first, or we got to get permission from this. You know what I mean? When it's,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be awesome for a time where some guy comes to the res and says, hey, I want to talk to someone about this thing, and then 50 people raise their hand and say, yeah, we can talk, we know about that.
Yeah. Or even
You know
just
what I mean?
your own members in your own tribe want to know about it.
Yeah,
It's all hands down. It's nobody's on the deck.
Well, and it's interesting. It's interesting how we have a set of values like that, like something where we think we have to have permission to be able to say something like that, something that we've hung on to at the utmost, you know, where we feel like we might know how to do something, or we might be the one doing all the work for somebody to the point where we could probably talk about it. But when it comes to actually being called the authority on the matter, I mean, it's just it's almost scary. I mean, I remember listening to Selena Hill talking one time about how she wouldn't even know how to go about doing something when it came to trying to ask permission for something from a Crow lady. You know, it felt scary to her, and I think that level of fear, I mean, that's sort of been instilled in us, like, somehow we got to get away, like Aaron said, somehow trying to get away from that stigma of not being afraid to say something, you know. But then again, it leads me to think back to how kids were raised back then, and you know, at the age of what, 12, 13, 14, 15, they could totally sustain on their own. You could leave them in the mountains and they could sustain on their own. And I don't know if our kids that age could do that anymore. So by the time that you were 27, well, heck yeah, you could probably talk about something by then, you know. But nowadays, at age 27, you could probably explain to somebody how to log on to Wi-Fi and how to apply for a job. And
well, that's it's crazy to think like it's possible. I know it's possible. If my kid can figure out how to upload a video to YouTube and even run his Chromebook and all that, there's I know the brain capacity is there to learn these things. So then what it comes down to is, are we doing the right job in creating the right surroundings for these things to grow? And the truth is we're not. Even us who are culturally aware and culturally competent, we still drop the ball. So I'm not, look, I don't want this podcast to turn into criticizing how other people do things. I mean, everything I'm talking about, I'm guilty of it too. But let's just so earlier though, I was gonna say something and I forgot, but because I got sidetracked by I was gonna talk about Native perspective. So people always say, we want to write this paper from a Native perspective. Now, once you make that phrase to a student, automatically there's a pressure. There's pressure to write in Native perspective. And what I've noticed with my students and others is, if you don't bring it up at all, what the product that comes out is Native perspective. But as soon as you say, we really want you to write this document from a Native perspective, now there's this pressure to write something and produce something that holds a perspective that, I mean, I don't even, you know, like the truth is,
manufacture it.
Yeah, like, so sometimes when people say like, we really want Native perspective, and like, there's times where I'm like, What is that?
Yeah. I ran into the same thing. I don't know if you were done yet, but
Yeah, I can be done.
be done. Okay, I'm done. I ran into the same thing. Teaching at SKC. We have to add this cultural component. And people always ask, can you help me add a cultural component? And I would think about that for a while, and I think, well, okay, well, I don't really know what they want or what they're asking, and it come down to for me, the answer for me was just like, well, are you teaching people to have integrity? And yeah, well, there you go. There's your cultural perspective. You know what I mean? Are you teaching them to be honest about their schoolwork and not cheating? Well, yeah, that's in the syllabus. Well, there's your cultural perspective. It's all in there.
Yeah, you're right. Like, because I'm like, okay, let's do this. Well, let's attack
it.
the ribbon shirt again. So in the 70s, in the 80s, because we've all young Indian men have fell victim to the ribbon shirt at some point in their life. If you're over the age of 30, I would think, right?
Yeah.
There's
Even
some
younger.
holdouts. There's some holdouts out there that are
Yeah.
rocking the green ribbon shirt with the yellow ribbons, and
The longer the tassel or the longer the ribbon dangling, the better. But you shouldn't go below the knee.
No,
That'd be
no.
weird.
What?
The ribbon
So
shouldn't
my
go below the
point is,
knee. Okay.
my point is it's still a shirt.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's a shirt.
just because your auntie made it and put some ribbons on it, now all of a sudden it's an Indian thing. I'm like, it's still a
funny fitting
shirt.
shirt.
Yeah,
It's
put a
just
bird
now
on
it's
it.
Put a bird on it.
with a 70s collar on it. So when people always say, like,
It's got a
say you
lapel.
walk into something, and you're wearing your ribbon shirt, they're like, oh, he's dressed up today. I'm like, no, he's dressed down. He
It
dressed
was
down.
sold by the Amish.
Yeah. You think?
And so,
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. All right.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. I like where this is going.
You think they're gonna either go to a funeral or going to a wedding, or
Yeah,
or they're gonna go sing an honor song somewhere?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The ribbon shirt. So what's funny is what the guys were going through in the 70s, 80s, early 90s is what women are going through right now with the ribbon skirt.
Yeah.
So now the ribbon skirt, So the ribbon skirt has kind of
Mhm.
taken this, like, I heard one lady's, I overheard a conversation, and there's all these women are wearing ribbon skirts. Those are only for ceremony. And I was just like, someone's gonna email us and get mad, but I'm like, so at what point is your Amish looking Hooterite skirt only for? No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry.
You
I'm
did
sorry.
it. Too late. We're not taking
Well,
it
I
out.
mean, I see more Indian people wearing polka dots now than I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. That's true.
And all of a sudden it's traditional, and I'm like, don't lie to me. If you like the skirt, like the skirt, but let's not make up an origin for it. Like, let's not say, I mean, it's a handmade skirt. It's a beautiful skirt. People should wear them, but you should also, like, acknowledge that it's like, I just like cool stuff,
Yeah.
You like cool stuff, but it's also very appropriate to acknowledge that it did come from somewhere. There was a place where it came from. I think what, like, you were saying, I think about that a lot of times. You said this a while ago, but it's like this idea of culture evolving, and I think that's something that's really helped me to accept modernized concepts of regalia, or putting ribbons onto everything. And now that we have masks, we got masks that got all kinds of crazy decorations going on there. But this idea of culture evolving, I thought, I guess that's true. And I guess we couldn't grow. And I guess in the past, you would have to come up with new words. If something new happened in your life, you'd have to come up with new words. And I guess today it's the same, new things happen and we have to, have some allowance for it, because somehow or some way it's having this positive effect on people, and it's allowing people to express themselves in the type of way that it oddly comes back to like the same end goal, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I think I could just see it now. People are like, Aaron's hating on the ribbon skirt.
Aaron, don't
I'm
like
not
ribbon
hating.
skirts.
Aaron clearly is not a ribbon. No, it's not. I'm not. I think it's beautiful. I think
Say it again, louder.
it does seem to like encompass kind of a native feel to it, but I also know, like, you know what, ladies, you can wear them anytime. It's not.
Yeah.
You
It's
can wear them at
polyester, right?
ceremonies. Well, it's a cotton
Polyester
dress.
ribbon. Cotton and polyester, yeah.
The
Yeah.
truth
It wasn't
is
that-
they kind of remind me of like Pentecostal church.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They do. They really do. And like you go to like these camp meetings and stuff, and women all wear skirts, and
Long
like
skirts.
I growing up like that, like I remember seeing people all the time wearing skirts.
Long skirts and a hoodie and done up
Long
hair.
Done up hair. Yeah, sprayed up, spraying around the hair.
The hoodie
So,
will never go out of style.
The hoodie.
Yeah, the hoodie.
Yeah.
The hoodie
Ribbon
will
hoodies.
never-
Ribbon hoodies.
Ribbon hoodies. We need ribbon hoodies.
Oh, you're gonna start
There you
something.
go. Yeah.
You know what?
ribbon
One of
hoodie.
these days, I'm gonna. Okay, so to our listeners out there, I'm challenging you guys. I
Challenge.
want a photo sent to what's our website or what's our email? Is it just IRC at SKC?
yeah. There we go. IRC.
It's IRC at skc.edu. I want a photo of a family wearing, all the women wearing ribbon skirts, all the men wearing ribbon shirts,
There you go.
matching. But
Yes.
it don't count unless there's an eagle head sewn on one of the ribbon shirts. I need an
What?
eagle head sewn on there.
Like a real eagle head?
No, you should do it.
No, that's illegal. No.
Okay. Like a back patch. Like an eagle back
Yeah.
patch.
Well, and the reason I said, you ever see like someone has an awesome like outfit, or like you're at a powwow or some kind of dance and you see an awesome outfit, and then they kill it by throwing like a friggin' like a dragonfly or like a eagle or like a horse, and it's always kind of a janky looking thing. I'm like, oh dude, it was so, you had it. You didn't have to add that.
You shouldn't have put the beaded feathers in there. You could have did
Oh.
without.
Or you see a wicked bustle and they turn around and there's a CD in the middle of it. You're like, come on, dude. Like, you almost did it. You almost did it.
So close. So close.
Yeah.
Cripes.
Sorry. I didn't mean to
No,
derail us a
no.
little bit. But
Yeah,
I needed
can't
a
remember.
good laugh.
Yeah, no. I can't remember where we were at now.
We were talking
Yeah.
about education.
Hey,
Yeah,
do you ever
it-
wonder why, like, do you ever honestly wonder, like, when some older folks says, go and get your education and, you know, A, B, and C. And do you ever think, like, they don't mean that?
No,
They
like,
just
do you
want
ever
you to
feel like
leave.
No,
It's like a
I
train.
never think that.
it's like a trained response?
No.
Because sometimes I wonder,
What?
like, I'm sure there's people who mean it, but I also know, like, there's these trained kind of responses to stuff.
Oh yeah.
I had
No,
You know what
I
I
know-
mean? And I'm not.
I had an
I'm just
uncle
using
one
that as an
time.
example. But
I had an uncle one time who followed up with me like years after, like when I was a kid, like everybody knew I was probably going to go to college and, so I go to college, but like years after he says, did you go to college? I said, yeah, I went. And he says, well, did you finish law school? And I started laughing. I was like, law school? And he says, well, I thought you were going to go to law school. And I was like, No, and he says, dang, because I was gonna need your help.
I got some legal trouble and I've been
That's
holding it
illegal.
off for about 8 years.
What kind of law did you study? He's like, I studied federal Indian law, and they're like, oh, you're useless to me. I need a criminal. I need
Yeah.
courtroom proceedings.
Well,
No,
I had
I
this
guess
guy.
I
Okay.
said that. I said it wrong. In my defense, I said it wrong. I
Say it
really
right.
was talking about these phrases that people always say, but I'm
Yeah.
like, do they really mean that, or is it like, in that moment, like, oh, this is what you say now?
Right. That's
You
like
know what I
it's
mean?
like the whole thing. That's just it's like very similar to, oh, the language is like vital to our culture. You hear that a lot. It just seemed like a standard thing to say because
Yeah, this one too, I hear all the time is that can't be translated.
oh yeah, that can't be translated into English.
Yeah,
maybe
it can.
but I mean, there's a huge
It just takes a
dictionary.
long time.
There's a huge dictionary that has done a fairly good job.
Where you at?
I love this episode. I love it because it's like I'm just airing it out.
Just let it out, man. This is healing.
I'm just letting it out in a good way. That's another way.
Let it
in
turn.
a good way.
Let it turn, Aaron.
Let it turn. Yeah.
Says,
So people
we
have
wanna
to endure.
start-
Oh yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. You're on a roll, man. You keep it going. You keep it going. I don't want to ruin your therapy here.
In a good way.
In a good way.
In a good way.
In a good
It's
way.
like, someone, can you start us off in a good way? It's like, well, it wasn't
What was wrong
bad.
with Did somebody get in a fight before I came in?
Now it feels bad.
Was there some gossiping or some bad words happening just now? What is it?
I mean that in a good way. I assumed that.
What did you mean before?
Were you saying bad stuff before?
That's like to be honest. To be honest.
Yeah.
Well,
in all due respect, it's like, oh, here comes an insult. It's like, Christ, man.
Yes.
Maybe people should email some of their commons, like what I was getting at was you graduate high school, go to college, get your education, but really I think a lot of these older people or your folks would probably say the truth is they would say, I really wish you didn't have to leave to be successful, but you do kind of, or maybe, I don't know, but you should. Like if it was the way they were really feeling,
Yeah.
Well, I think something about what Myrna said really strikes me. I mean, I've been sitting in this class this semester for an architectural history, like going through that, and it's really interesting to listen to this professor talk about something almost proudly. He talks about it in the sense that, he understands that this is where European people originated from. And so when he talks about it, he has this sense of quirkiness. He has a sense of confidence. He has a sense of pride when he talks about it. But yeah, at the beginning of the semester, he had requested that when we are looking at these buildings as he's showing us, I mean, he does always give us a level of interpretation to these buildings, but he asked us to come up with our own thought and our own to generate our own opinion, and what does it evoke in us, what emotion does it evoke in us, and are these emotions equivalent to what the concept of the building was trying to achieve. And for me, half the time I'm offended because I'm sitting there thinking, how could you possibly have a society that lived in that way, that like the Romans lived, or going way back? And how could people want to conquer people in that such a way? And so my immediate go-to is the things that I've tried to study my hardest. And even though I had to learn these things in a book, I go back to what I've been told by my peers, or what I've been told, what I've read in a book about a battle, or about a tribal history, or a tribal relationship, or a tribal situation where, like, this tribe moved from this place to this place, and this is why, and that's where I can go to. And what strikes me the most about what Myrna said is, like, I'm trying to find a way to relate to what this guy is saying without being offended. And I feel like that's a huge challenge in the education system. And so where Myrna is talking about, we're exploring this situation, but I think what a challenge to us, like American Indian, Indigenous, whatever you want to call it, is being able to let that go, let that anger go of something that, well, for one, I wasn't at any battle from 1889 or whatever, but letting the anger go from something that happened to our ancestors, enough to be able to understand a history of another people, to be able to do something like develop this research protocol, or develop this this way of how are we going to go ahead and preach what we know in an educational setting.
Yeah, that's there's just so much work that needs to be done to infiltrate that system, I guess. And I guess that's where I always get stuck, and I think, well, why do we need to? Why do we keep needing to make textbooks about things that are important to us, when maybe that's not really the way it needs to be? But I don't know. I mean, it's what we got. I've said that before. It's the state
I
of
think
what.
sometimes we overthink it too, though.
Yeah. How
It's like
so?
simply, it's just like when you open a book, sometimes you just want it to be Indians in the book.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like
Yeah.
relatable stuff, It's like, I think sometimes we try to like overdo and overthink and overcompensate, when really at the end of the day it comes down to, like, truth be told, when I turn the TV on, it'd be cool to see some Indians on there doing regular stuff.
No, I get it. I get it. I just think in the far distant reality that's not real, that is that is some
The red pill or the blue pill.
the red road, way down the red road. The red road of freedom for the
That
Native
red road,
American.
The
that
interstellar
red
red
road.
road.
The interstellar
Yeah.
yeah, the interstate of red,
When we go
that
to Mars.
when we go when the first Indian lands on Mars and makes that red road on that dusty planet, there resides the ultimate in all of our desires of
that
Indianness.
that that red road. That long time ago, long time ago on that red road.
Yeah,
It's
that
it's it's real narrow. They used to say. They always tell us that many years ago. That red road is real narrow.
oh cripes.
But in a good
Yeah.
way, we'll finish that. We'll finish that that red road, huh?
Yes, that place. But that's the reality. The real deal is that we're here, man. We're here now. We all read. We all like to read books. We all like to watch TV. So yeah, you're right. Why can't that stuff be filled with Indian things.
And I think we need to settle down on what Indian perspective is. Like settle down. Like let it. If we do our job at home,
Starts
my
there.
kids will write an Indian perspective.
There you go.
Well,
We
let's
don't
go
have to
hunting
teach them
then.
that.
Yeah.
Let's go hunting on that red road.
Yeah.
Offer your tobacco and then you go hunting. like that, real sacred in a good way.
Oh man. All right. I think you guys have had enough. I'm gonna cut you guys all off.
So
Well, I'm gonna cut
takeaways
Aaron
from
off.
today. The takeaways
let's
from
do it.
today.
Take it away. Wrap it up.
Put some ribbon on it.
Put a ribbon on it.
Put a ribbon on it. Put a bow on it. An Indian
okay.
bow. It has to be an
Okay.
Indian one.
Let's get 2
Hey,
takeaways from Aaron.
And for the record,
Okay.
everyone
All right.
out there, I don't mind being called an Indian.
All right.
So when people always say, "Do you want to be Indian or Native American?" I didn't come up with either of them. I wasn't there at the meeting. Like no one said, "Hey, what's your vote?" But Indian's cool. I'm cool with it, guys.
Okay.
It's not offensive.
NDN.
And Indian.
And to all my Indian friends out there, no more bumper stickers. Okay, guys?
Let's settle down on those.
Let's quit the bumper
Calm
stickers.
down. I mean, they're hard to get off for one. I mean, got to
If
resell
I see
that.
one more,
Okay.
if I see one more official Res Ride bumper sticker, I'm gonna lose it.
Where do you get those at anymore?
I don't
haven't
know.
seen a bumper
I don't
sticker in
know.
about a decade, like where you could buy one. a complete decade free of bumper sticker retail.
They're out there.
Are they? All right.
Yeah,
I haven't
man.
seen them. All right. 2 takeaways. Go. Aaron.
Nah, the mood's gone. Let's just end it, man.
2 takeaways. Salisha, go. Then we'll end it. Nobody's feeling it. No one's feeling it.
We should be proud of ribbons.
We killed it. We killed it.
No,
be proud of your ribbons.
How about this for a takeaway
Just
for
a
all you?
shirt?
And I already,
Okay.
I said it already maybe twice, but in all seriousness, for Indigenous researchers out there, don't put a lot of pressure on yourself to define what Native perspective is. Let the work do its job. It'll come out. It'll be there. But don't sit there and hash. What's Native? Is this Native perspective? Is this? Just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. Trust me. The end. If you did your research right, if you did it thorough and meaningful, do something with purpose, it'll come out the way it should come out. So don't stress over that.
Yep. Salisha.
I just think that it's good to be able to hear the things that are continuing to be encouraged in higher academics, and being able to know that there's still a lot of work that could be done and still time to move forward.
Alrighty. We're out then. We're going to wrap this one. You done, Aaron? Did he leave? He left. All right. We're done.
Yeah, we're done. My internet's even telling me I'm done. Like and subscribe.
Thank you for joining us on this episode. And to learn more, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at IRC You can find us also on Facebook and YouTube by searching SKC Indigenous Research Center. You can also visit our website at irc.skc.edu. Don't forget to join us next time as we continue our discussions on Indigenous research, Indigenous research methodologies, and Indigenous worldviews.